Welcome to the Abort Ignorance Montana Podcast. My name's Tanaia, your host. Today we're going to be talking about some current events that are happening about abortion across the nation, as well as is being pro-life or pro-choice on a spectrum, or is it all or nothing on either end? We hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, please subscribe so that you can get notified of every time that we have an episode that is airing, as well as downloads. You can listen to those anywhere on the go. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere that podcasts are listened to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So listen anywhere that is convenient for you. And as always, we want to hear from you. So if you have questions about today's episode or thoughts that you want to share with us, please email us at abortignorancemt@gmail.com, and we would love to hear from you and your thoughts about anything regarding this topic and any insight that you have, or just questions if you want to clarify something. So without further ado, we are going to dive into some current events. So there's been a few things happening nationwide about abortion recently, and namely the biggest thing isn't super recent, but recently it was challenged, and that was the President Trump's one big beautiful bill defunding Planned Parenthood. So in July of 2025, so last year on July 4th actually, President Trump and his administration, they passed what they call the One Big Beautiful Bill, and it has just a ton of different provisions in there for fixing the economy and tons of other things. And anyways, one of those that's in there was something about defunding Planned Parenthood. So Congress voted for 1 year not offer the federal funds to Planned Parenthood and their affiliates that had previously been offered. So historically, and the last recorded number in 2023, Planned Parenthood received $800,000 from federal funding to help provide abortions to people in the nation. And so what happened last July was that Congress said, we are here representing the people that elected us, and the majority of people that elected us, they do not want to have taxpayer-funded abortions. And that's what it means when you have federal funding going into abortion facilities, is there's then, financial help and scholarships that go to people to help them receive those abortions. And that money comes from Medicaid, which is a taxpayer-funded financial provision. And so that can happen on a federal level or a state level. And so federally, Congress said that no longer are we going to be, offering that money to abortion providers. And they didn't say, they weren't discriminating. They weren't trying to say, it's because we don't like Planned Parenthood or we don't like abortion. They were just saying abortion is, a controversial thing. The majority of people that, elected those Congress members to office said that we don't want to pay for it. And maybe that means people are okay with someone getting an abortion. Maybe it's not, but they said we don't want to pay for it because it's not the decision that we would make. And so that was on a federal level. And so the repercussions of that, what's happened since then, is that 47 Planned Parenthood facilities have shut down. We have 6 Planned Parenthood facilities in Montana. None of those were affected by this defunding that happened through this bill last July. So, and that is because we also offer funding statewide on a state level. So we, in our state budget, we say that, okay, we want taxpayers in Montana to provide some amount of money that goes to Medicaid that can then be used for reimbursement purposes. So Medicaid reimbursement purposes for abortion providers and services. And so that's, if someone can't afford an abortion, but they are going to get one, then and they're on Medicaid, they qualify for Medicaid, they can use that money from Medicaid to get that abortion. And it's typically very low cost, even free sometimes. And then what happens from there is the abortion provider just submits that back to the state and they get reimbursed through Medicaid. So the abortion facility receives that money from the state funding in Medicaid that comes from taxpayers that usually would have come directly from the person that wanted to have the abortion procedure done. And so that's for our state, we still offer that. And that means that our Planned Parenthood facilities have still been able to, stay in business, and because we're still funding them statewide. Now, if they were receiving anything federally, that money was taken away. And that money being taken away from states where the state doesn't fund it on a local level, at a state level, then they don't have any funding left to exist. And so that has caused 47 clinics to shut down across the nation, which is a really big number. And that was just in 2025. And so that funding that was offered as a reimbursement to Medicaid, to when someone uses Medicaid to get an abortion, that's valid through next July, or this July 4th, coming in several months. And so recently, that was in July, and that's kind of what happened. That's how it affects Montana. But then it was, of course, challenged by Planned Parenthood. They said, this is unconstitutional. This is not okay. When that went through on that one big, beautiful bill, and they said, okay, we're defunding you. We're taking away $800,000 in Medicaid reimbursements because the majority of people in America don't want taxpayer-funded abortions, which means you and I are paying for other people to get abortions and kill their unborn baby. And we don't agree with that. And so we don't necessarily want to pay for it. And so Planned Parenthood didn't like that. And as they usually do, they sued the Trump administration, and it went through a series of courts. And one lower court on a state level said, this is unconstitutional, and it's not okay, and you're infringing on people's rights, and it's basically you're punishing these clinics for just existing, and that ended up getting put up the food chain, so to speak, in the courts. And it went to a higher court, and that court was the Supreme Court, and there was 3 judges on the panel, and they actually were all appointed not by President Trump, but by President Obama and President Biden. And those judges decided that this actually is constitutional to defund Planned Parenthood for 1 year. It's not punishing them for anything that they've done in the past. It's saying, here's a new rule, and moving forward, they can choose to still receive Medicaid reimbursement funding federally from the government if they want to provide their other services that they say that they provide, whether that's claiming to provide birth control or prenatal counseling, prenatal support, or adoption referrals, anything like that, which the numbers are very, very low. I'll include a link to that in the show notes that you can follow, but the actual percentage of services that are provided by Planned Parenthood that don't just end in abortion is very low. So 96% of patients that go in come out having had an abortion, even though Planned Parenthood claims that they offer adoption, abortion, and help with actually keeping the baby. But 96% of them end in abortions. And so all that this is saying, all that the bill that the Trump administration voted on, the Congress voted on, and it went through, was saying that if you want to have an abortion at your facility, then you don't get to receive the Medicaid reimbursement. But if you want to offer any of those other services, then that's fine. You can still do that, and you can still submit Medicaid reimbursements for that. And so they just have to make a choice of which do I want to do, and many of them chose to have to shut down instead of continuing to provide other services besides abortion. And so again, that's a national level. It's a big deal. It shows that most of America doesn't want taxpayer-funded abortions, but on a local level, even if most of us do agree that we don't want taxpayer-funded abortions, we still have that in Medicaid. And it's interesting to me because taxes, way back when we first started taxing the American people, our government did, the reason for taxes was so that the government could have some money to carry out the wishes of the people and to carry out the decisions that reflect the moral values of the people. So although we do have, a lot of people in Montana that are kind of in the middle as far as, maybe they don't want abortion, but they're not going to tell somebody else to not have an abortion, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this episode. Despite that, a lot of people say, like, I don't want to pay for it. Like, it's maybe you can still have one, but not me. I don't want to have one. And so unfortunately, though, we are still having taxpayer funded abortions in Montana because we fund it on a local level instead of a federal level. And so that one big beautiful bill that happened and changed that funding for Planned Parenthood, took it away for 1 year, didn't actually really affect Montana at all, unfortunately. And so we still have taxpayer funded abortions in our state. Some people think that's great, but I think there's a lot of us that really grieves us because, like I said, the taxation originally was supposed to reflect our morals. And if you're not for abortion and you're being forced to have your taxes go to paying for someone else's abortion, that's extremely offensive. And it's a problem. And for me, that just shows that, the government doesn't necessarily reflect the will of the people correctly. And they're spending, minority groups and ideals are causing how the majority of people think in Montana to have to pay for their ideology. And so anyways, that was just challenged. That law nationally was challenged recently in December, and the ultimate decision was by the Supreme Court was that it's the defunding Planned Parenthood was constitutional to do. And so that was, just as recently in December, even though the bill had been in effect since last July, they were still trying to challenge that. And so it was a big win. It was really great that the courts ruled that way. They said that, this stands. And so because Planned Parenthood is being defunded for that 1 year, there are lots and lots of clinics shutting down. 47 so far have closed their doors. Planned Parenthood themselves claim that it could affect up to 200 clinics nationwide, forcing them to close. And that is a significant number of abortion clinics. And so that's pretty great. Even though it didn't spill over into Montana and we still have our 6 Planned Parenthood clinics, it's a big win nationally that there's going to be at least, there's 47 already closed, maybe up to 200 Planned Parenthood clinics will close before this coming July. So that was one current event that I thought was worth just sharing and bringing up. How it affects us, how it doesn't affect us. And like I said, unfortunately in Montana, we fund abortions on a state level. So we still have taxpayer funded abortions in our state, despite Planned Parenthood being defunded at the federal level. And with that, in 2025, Montana state, we had 787 abortions in our state last year that were taxpayer funded abortion. So we had more abortions than that. The number is over 2,000 abortions, but we had 787 babies that were killed, and we all paid for it as the taxpayers. So if that just kind of rubs you the wrong way, like it does me, let your legislators know. There is potentially some things they could do to change the Medicaid laws. I believe they tried to recently, and like in the last session, didn't work super well, from my understanding, but we can always voice our opinions to our legislators. That's what they're there for, and let them know that what can we do to stop taxpayer funded abortions? How can we advocate for that legally? What can we do to bring laws forth to stop that? And again, maybe that doesn't have to be a determination on how you feel about abortion. It could really reflect your values on abortion. But if you just don't want to be paying for someone else to get one and be party to that, we're all guilty at that point if we're all paying taxes, which we have to do, and that money is being spent on abortions, and the majority of us don't want that, then let's call our legislators and let them know. So that's something that you can do, even though we're not in session, even though we're going to have some primary elections coming up. You can call your legislator or email them at any time and just let them know how you feel about these things. And so I would recommend you do that. If you need help finding who your legislator is, you can email me at abortignorancemt@gmail.com. I can help you find it. I believe it's on the Montana, I think it's like LEG legislative, so legmontana.gov, where you can go and search for your legislator. But if you need help, email me and I will help you find that information so that you know who to contact. And that's true for anyone across the state, wherever you're located. We can find who represents you in Helena and help you call them or email them if you want to let them know that you just found out that Montana has taxpayer funded abortions and you would really like to see that stop. And what can we do about that. So feel free to do that if you want to. And then, so that's another just kind of current event of how many abortions we've had in our state, what's been going on with the defunding of Planned Parenthood, how it affects us. And then something else that happened recently in the news about abortion. It wasn't here locally, but it is something noteworthy to bring up. Is there was a minister, so a pastor, that it's a female, and she claims to be a progressive minister. And she stated in one of her messages, one of her sermons to her congregation, she said, now I want you to listen to this, and I'll repeat it. But in her message, she's talking about the Beatitudes and Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and she wanted to add one to that. And she was saying that she thought Jesus, if he was asked, would say this about abortion. So here's what she said. Blessed are those, she believes Jesus would say about abortion, blessed are those who end pregnancies, for they will be known for their loving kindness. That's a quote from Reverend Dr. Rebecca Todd Peters. In the show notes, I include a link to the video. You can watch it for yourselves. When I first heard that, I was just really, really appalled, because she's speaking on behalf of Jesus and saying that he would tell us, blessed are those who would end pregnancies, and that they will be known for their loving kindness. And when you're ending a pregnancy, that is killing a preborn baby. Someone is dying. And nowhere in the Bible, if you actually read it, does it talk about advocating for murder. In fact, murder is one of the 10 commandments that says, do not murder. Don't do that. Is very clear in the Bible. And loving kindness is something that promotes life. And God talks about loving kindness in the Bible all the time. It's so much that phrase is in there multiple times. And it's never in reference to murder. And this is a pastor that we have, a minister she's from the Presbyterian Church, and she is saying that on behalf of Jesus would say, blessed are those who end pregnancies, for they will be known for their loving kindness. And I looked into it a little bit, and she definitely has people that listen to her and follow her. And there's people that say that they are believers and Christians that are listening to her messages. She wrote a book about this whole subject, and basically saying from a Christian perspective, she is, pro-abortion. And there's people that follow that in the church, and they say yes. They say that it represents how I feel and what I think. And I just think that that's such an interesting thing, because abortion is something that we view it on a spectrum a lot of times of if there's pro-life on one side and there's pro-choice on the other side, and we view ourselves on a spectrum of, okay, I'm somewhere, in the middle, or I'm kind of on the pro-life side of the middle, or the pro-choice side of the middle, or maybe you're all the way over to the end and you're super, super pro-abortion, or you're super, super anti-abortion. And we view it on a spectrum. And I think that we're getting that mixed up with how we view politics. So politics can also be viewed on a spectrum. We have people that say, okay, I'm a conservative, and being a conservative means different things to different people. And then we have people that say, okay, I'm a liberal, or I'm a progressive, or a Democrat, and that means different things to different people. And I think that that's appropriate, because we all have to be a political affiliation isn't just one subject. It's every subject. It's okay, how do I feel about property taxes and abortion? And how do I feel about taxes in general? How do I feel about public school? How do I feel about school choice? How do I feel about the economy and foreign relations? How do I feel about foreign wars? How do I feel about anything, every topic that we could possibly talk about, oil prices or farming or whatever it could be. And you can have an opinion about all those multiple different subjects. And you can have a conservative opinion, or you can have a liberal opinion, or you can be somewhere on that spectrum. And I think that in some ways that is healthy and good to have that spectrum, because then we get really good, as long as people are talking and having conversations in good faith, with, reasonable dialogue, and we're debating. That's what our country was founded on, was everyone gets to bring their idea to the table, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to see which idea wins out and is the best amongst the most people. And so I think that that's okay to view, political leanings, ideologies, on a spectrum. Because like I said, we can say, okay, I'm a conservative, and that can mean a million different things to a million different people. And I actually was just at an event and talking with someone who, we all were in the room proclaiming, okay, I'm a conservative. And we got talking about this podcast and talking about abortion. And this person shared with me, where I come from, you're 1 year old when you when you're born. So you start counting your age from the time that you're conceived in the womb. We don't do that in America. You start aging, so to speak, once you are born, but really you're 9 months old at that time, not 0. And so this person said, that's what we believe. That's how, we know life exists in the womb where I come from. But this person said, I don't want abortion for me and my family. I don't want my kids to experience abortion or, my grandkids. Like, I don't want anyone that I know or have any family members that I know to be killed through abortion. I don't want that, but I still think someone else should get to choose. And we're sitting in a room full of people that say, I'm conservative. And that's what got me thinking of, okay, so conservatism is on a spectrum because we have different things that we believe or think about different subjects. And again, I think that's healthy and good. And this person and I had a fantastic dialogue. I learned so much from them. I was grateful for that they were sharing their perspective with me because I just started asking them, why do you feel that way? What does that come from? Because I genuinely want to know. And so if you're out there and you feel that way, that, abortion, you don't want it for your family, but you're okay with someone else to choose, I would genuinely like to know, why is it okay with you for someone else to choose abortion if you know that's killing an innocent baby? Why is that okay? And that's not rhetorical or challenging. I would actually love to know what people think about that. So please email me at abortignorancemt@gmail.com if you feel that way and you have questions or thoughts. Like I said, we were in this room of people that we all said we were conservative, but abortion meant something different. Being pro-life meant something different to me and this person I was talking to. And on one level, I'm okay with different ideas coming forward, of course, and I think we should. But when it comes to abortion is something that can't really be viewed on a spectrum. It's more something that is a little bit more of black and white of, is it right or is it wrong? And it's as simple as, is it killing a baby or is it not? And what's interesting is these days, a lot of people will admit and say, it's killing a baby. Yes. But I'm still okay with abortion because, and they have their reasons, whether it's, to protect women, which we could talk about that, how that's not even true, or because people, it's their body, their choice, or all the arguments that people can come forward of why somebody else, it's okay for them to choose abortion, but I know that it's killing a baby. And so even people that, say, well, I'm okay with abortion or not okay with abortion, we should not have it, except for cases of rape, incest, life of the mother. That's a really common language these days too. And again, we could talk about each of those subjects as their own argument, and I'm sure we will at some point. But people that say that, so that they're on a spectrum, right? They're viewing abortion on a spectrum of, okay, I know it's wrong, I know it's killing a baby, but here's when it's okay to kill a baby. And if you're viewing things from especially a Christian perspective, a biblical Christian perspective, and also just from a pro-life perspective, it is just a yes or no. It's not like political leanings where, okay, I'm okay with, maybe I don't want us to get involved in foreign affairs, and that's more of a liberal approach, but I think that we should, have closed borders, and that's more of a conservative approach, something like that. And so if we view abortion on a spectrum like we do our political affiliations, then we get things murky. Things get muddy and murky as far as what is right and what is wrong. And so I think we have to be really careful to know that abortion isn't viewed on a spectrum. Now, what I want to say with that, the caveat to that, is that people's abortion experiences and the reasons they choose abortion or don't choose abortion, that is a spectrum. That there can be a million different reasons why someone chooses abortion. It doesn't mean that it's okay, or that it's beneficial for that person, for that woman to receive that abortion. Doesn't mean that it's going to help her just because she has a different reason than somebody that chose abortion at the appointment before her. And the same thing with if you're pro-life and you don't want to have abortion be legal in our state and you want it to be unthinkable, there can be a spectrum of reasons why that is. And our story, like, people are complex, right? And that's why our political affiliations can be complex. And it's okay to not be, as conservative as the next person, or, a little bit, one way or the other on some topics. But that has to stop. Where that stops and becomes dangerous is when we get into moral issues about life and death. And so things like abortion, if we view that on a spectrum, and in our political affiliation spectrum, we fall somewhere in the middle of, well, abortion's okay for certain people at certain times. Well, then what's to say it's not okay for your daughter the next time? What's to say it's not okay for your son's girlfriend the next time? What's to say it's not okay for your wife the next time? Like, when does it stop if it's ever okay? And so it doesn't mean that I think we should, reduce people down to something so simplistic as either you're for abortion or you're against abortion, and you don't get to express your story as to why you're there. That's why I think conversations like this, we need to keep having them. And like I had with this person at this event, I loved having that conversation, because we need to keep questioning ourselves about, okay, I'm viewing abortion as if I get to be, somewhere on a spectrum of 1 to 10 of pro-life or pro-choice. So if pro-life is 10 and pro-choice is 1, maybe I'm like a 6. No. Either you're pro-life or you're pro-choice. You're one or the other. And we don't realize that by choosing any level of abortion and having it be okay, we are choosing the pro-abortion side. And again, I don't think that means we should be reduced down to, you have to just think that way. I think that we need to be having conversations to help each other bring out, okay, why am I on the spectrum? Why am I a 6 on the, scale of 1 to 10, pro-choice, pro-life side, but more on the pro-life side, but not quite a 10. Why am I there? What do I think? Let's have those conversations. And I think if we did, I think we'd all edge a little more towards the pro-life side until we realized, like, it really is as simple as either a woman is harmed or she isn't, and either a baby dies or they don't. And so I think that is just something that we've gotten muddied in the water. And I think that that's what this conversation with this person and this progressive minister, she calls herself, from the Presbyterian Church, what she says about abortion and Jesus, that people who end their pregnancies are blessed and they'll be known for their loving kindness. And terminating a life, ending a life, killing someone is never okay. It's never, in cold blood, an innocent person. That's never something that would be seen as loving, especially from a biblical perspective. And so anyways, just some food for thought of what I was thinking through this week, that, abortion really isn't on a spectrum. Our political affiliation can be, but especially for those of us in the church, a lot of people that, we believe in God, a lot of people in our state, they also believe in abortion. And I think that we need to start having those conversations in the church to discuss, okay, why is abortion killing or why isn't it? And we need to do it from a biblical perspective, with, a whole picture, and realize that abortion it's the ending of a life, and people are complex. So let's have those conversations as to why you're a little bit okay with abortion sometimes. So again, if you're one of those people, or if you know someone who is, please email us at abortignorancemt@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. Or if you have questions or thoughts on that quote from Reverend Dr. Rebecca Todd Peters, that was a very, 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 very pro-abortion quote. Very, very sad to hear from someone who is a leader in the church. If you have questions about that, please email us. We want to hear from you. And if you have thoughts on, being pro-life or pro-choice on a spectrum, send me those thoughts as well. We want to hear from you if you have questions about it, or if you're someone who is, mostly pro-life, but in certain cases you're pro-choice. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation as to why that is, because I would genuinely love to learn why you feel that way and why you think that, because I believe that abortion either is harmful or it isn't. There's not some situations when it can be good for somebody, because somebody always dies. Even if the woman doesn't feel the immediate repercussions, as some women claim, of, whether that's emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, even if she claims to not feel those right away, a baby still dies. Someone is still harmed. And so let's talk about that. So just some food for thought. Like I said, very interesting stuff. I was intrigued by the conversation I got to have. And I think we just need to be careful about, we can have political affiliations somewhat on a spectrum, because conservative, how conservative we are or how liberal we are can mean different things to different people. And as long as we're having good faith conversations, I think that's good. I think we need to have those conversations with the intent of, we want to sway someone to the side that we believe in, right? And that's why we talk. And so I won't shy away from that. Like I would claim to be, I'm a conservative. Am I as conservative as someone next to me, or more conservative than someone on the other side of me? I'm sure. But of course, I'm going to try and sway people to be, whatever I see as the level of conservatism that I am. And I have someone that's, maybe more conservative than me, and they're going to say, well, let's, you should think this about this topic because it's better, and all of that. But when you get down to issues like life and death, moral, ethical issues like this, we can't let that become as simplified as a political belief on a spectrum where it's okay sometimes, because there's so much more at stake in these situations. And so we have to separate those things out of, there are issues that should not be on a spectrum when it comes to how we view things from a governmental or political standpoint. There are things that we need to have that they just exist because they're an absolute truth. And it's always wrong to end the life of a baby that is so innocent and in the womb, and it doesn't help women or men either. It harms everyone involved. And so it's not something that we can be on a spectrum. But if you are on a spectrum, because a lot of us are, please, again, email us. We want to hear from you. We'd love to have the conversations and learn from each other. So abortignorancemt@gmail.com if you want to write in. You can always subscribe to our channel and download episodes so you can listen anywhere that you go. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube to listen to our videos and hear what we have to say, as well as answers to questions that we get from people that are emailing in. And so until next time, you can find us on those platforms, and we look forward to talking with you next time.